On point, I'm Kartikeya Sharma. Today we have 3 on points lined up for you. In on point 1, we ask a simple question: do voters support political defections? A new survey suggests most Indians oppose party switching and want stronger anti-defection laws. In on point 2, we examine the controversy surrounding Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann and the alleged sacrilege video that has now snowballed into a major political battle. Could it become a factor ahead of 2027 assembly elections? And in on point 3, we ask why Mumbai continues to come to a halt every monsoon. A few hours of heavy rains were enough to flood roads, disrupt trains and paralyze normal life across city. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Trump says Iran has assured that US will ensure no tolls or additional charge will be imposed on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. France has reported its first confirmed Ebola case involving a doctor who recently returned from a humanitarian mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Doctor is placed in a specialized medical facility, is currently in stable condition. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian invites Prime Minister Narendra Modi to attend the state funeral and burial ceremonies of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Al Khamenei. Prime Minister Modi praises smooth conduct of NEET exam and the government's extensive preparation. Prime Minister launched the whole of government approach for the examination. Today we ask a question that has become central to Indian politics. Are defections becoming the new route to power? And what do voters really think about politicians switching parties after getting elected? Over the last few years, Indian politics has witnessed several high-profile defections, government collapses and political alignments reshape. Supporters call it political freedom, critics call it betrayal of the public mandate, but where do voters stand? Let's begin with the most basic question: how do voters view politicians changing parties after being elected? Nearly 68% respondents say party switching is wrong and unethical, while only 16% consider it acceptable. And when voters look at the law that is supposed to stop defections, they don't seem impressed. More than 62% say the current anti-defection law is weak, while barely 11% believe it is strong. That suggests a growing demand for stronger safeguards against political crossing. But interestingly, voters also want elected representatives to exercise independent judgment in some situations. Nearly 57% say MLAs should be allowed to vote according to their conscience in Rajya Sabha elections rather than strictly follow party instructions. Now comes the key question: what should happen when an MP or MLA wants to leave the party that got them elected? A massive 66% say the representatives should first resign the seat and then join another party. Only 16% support using the 2/3 merger provision. If a legislator resigns, should there be a fresh election? More than 82% support a by-election in some form. Nearly half support the current system, while 35% want the cost of the by-election recovered from the resigning MP or MLA. But should defectors be allowed to contest the by-election they trigger? Here, voters become stricter. 46% say they should not be allowed to contest again, while 38% say let them. And what about the future elections? Will voters reward party switchers? The answer appears to be no. More than 62% say they would not support a politician who changes parties after getting elected. So why do voters think like this? Why do voters think politicians switch parties in the first place? The findings are striking. 56% believe defections are driven by personal financial gains or inducements. Taken together, the survey paints a remarkable consistent picture. Voters overwhelmingly dislike defection. So as we debate defection under BJP rule, the larger question is not just what politicians think, but what India thinks. And on this issue, I am joined by my panel. But in this panel, and let me introduce my panel. First, I am joined by Amitabh Tiwari, political analyst, someone who has authored this entire report. Arun Anand, political analyst, Dr. Ashwani Kumar, Professor TIS, Rajiv Lochner, a very noted author, and Brijesh Pandey continues to be with me in my studio, my input editor. Let me straight away go to Amitabh Tiwari first. Very striking data. But what I want to know is, politicians work under public pressure. If there is public pressure, why are so many defections taking place? When this data tells me that people don't like defections.
No, essentially we have to understand why there is a lot of curiosity and discussions on defections. Whatever vote a candidate gets, 1/3 of it, the thumb rule is 1/3 of it is due to the party symbol, 1/3 due to the party leadership, which is state or national, and 1/3 due to his own charisma, popularity, etc. Now, we have seen that the number of independents winning in Lok Sabha election or even Vidhan Sabha elections is getting smaller by the day, which means that any MP or MLA who is winning, large contribution is due to the leadership, national or state, and the party symbol. And that is why if a person is elected on the basis largely of the party symbol and the leadership, if he or she wants to resign, then naturally the people or overwhelming majority feel that they should resign first and then move to a new party. And in fact, people also believe that in some cases they should not be allowed to contest at all because they have entered into a 5-year agreement. It's a contract, sort of a contract with the voters, that they will be representing this constituency on this particular symbol. But despite this, as you mentioned, why is this happening? Okay, the answer also is largely in the survey itself, because of aligning with parties in power, because of maybe some inducements, pressure, some financial gains, which there have been allegations all about also.
Okay. Okay. Let me straight away go to Professor Ashwini Kumar, sir. Let's see this data in the context of what is happening today. Let's marry it with the let's marry the data with the Ground Act. What has been the Ground Act? Sir, Punjab is where the Aam Aadmi Party split, and in West Bengal where the TMC completely split. I'm not going into other cases right now because these parties were ideologically opposed to Bharatiya Janata Party. You wrote a very interesting article. You said that what is happening should be seen from the framework of either the integrative dominance of Bharatiya Janata Party or the continuation of the competitive coalition politics of the previous 25 years. So my question to you, Professor, is, are we seeing a reset of the Indian political system where last 25 years were upward of Indian politics, where you had two-party system, and we go back to 1971 where we have one hegemonic dominant party and multiple small or smaller parties like Jana Sangh of 1960s or Swatantra Party of 1960s or left parties of 1960s who ranged between 25 to 39 MPs, barring the 67 MPs of Swatantra Party, if I am not wrong, in 67.
Yeah.
So that's my question to you, sir.
Karthikeya, I think this is if you look at India's evolution at this juncture, although BJP, if you look at the seat, I mean, like simply just go by the seat, in the 2024 elections, they don't have full majority. But if you look at the structure of the BJP dominance, it has clearly emerged as the dominant system. I'm using again and again, whenever I come to your channel, reminding my great teacher, legendary Professor Kothari's idea of a system dominant party, in the largest sense. So that's happening. On the other hand, if you look at the rise of Vijay, I mean, like in Tamil Nadu, that also suggests that somehow, the powerful regional political parties will continue to remain, if not dominant, but competitive. So what is happening here? It is creating a fluid, sense of politics, and also creating, remarkably, very important democratic paradox. That's how I'm looking at the data, On the one hand, if we look at Karthikeya, and I look at how Amitabh, eloquently explained it, the voters are rejecting what political scientists call surrogate representation. If A is elected on the platform of a party B, then it should remain with that. That's the old idea of, delegate party theory or representation. That has somehow, come to the play here. So voters by and large India, if you look at, suggesting to us that no, don't do this, surrogate representation in this kind of, multi-party BJP dominant system. Let me phrase it this way. Multi-party competitive regional system, dominant, led by dominant BJP. So in this sense, I'm reminded of, also, my own works on anti-defection, etc., etc. I'm also thinking about JP, also thinking about Edmund Burke. What will happen to the legislator? Are legislators becoming captive and political, prisoners of the party? I mean, that's a huge democratic paradox issue. So, and on the other hand, if you look at, I'm just suggesting, I'm looking at the trend that has happened in Brazilian and dominant, what we call centro politics. So if you look at Shiv Sena, Sinde, and if you look at, other smaller groups like TMC, today in the Lok Sabha, they have 30 plus, So that's something like what has happened in Brazil in the comparative politics context, centro politics. That becomes transactional, pragmatic bloc, de-ideological bloc, focusing more on, serving the people.
Or is it because of the fact, let me take this argument to Mr. Rajiv Lochan, is it also because of the fact that there is de-ideologization of the regional political parties? If you look at, if you fracture the parliament or the political system of 60s and 70s, the political ideology were very sharply defined, what Swatantra party stood for in reforms and other things, the Bombay Club, as a student of history, I can count the left parties, the split between CPI and CPM, Jan Sangh, multiple other PSP, I can just go on, multiple other parties formed at that point of time. Is it because there's a de-ideologization of our regional party system, Mr. Lochan? Or is there something else at play, sir?
See, the kind of parties that the Swatantra party was, or the communists were, if you leave them aside for the moment, there's very little difference between all other parties. All the other parties were virtually the same. They had almost the same program. It was just that they gave emphasis on different kinds of things. The most important thing over here, which Amitabh Tiwari has done, is to say that people in India have a very strong moral undercurrent. The moral undercurrent being that you cannot change parties so easily, especially, his survey says, especially if you're taking money, you're becoming corrupt. So that moral undercurrent that he highlights is something which I would welcome quite a lot. Having said that, I would take you back to the first 3 elections. People did not vote for the Congress. They voted for Nehru. After Nehru lost his aura, politics in India became very confused. That was the time when the communists got a small chance to come in with coalition parties. But the real politics of a single party, people voting for a single leader, that started happening after Indira Gandhi won the Bangladesh war. And Indira Gandhi's victory resulted in an election in 72 in which people voted for Indira Gandhi, not for their local MP. Similarly, in 1984, people voted for Rajiv Gandhi and Indira Gandhi and not for the Congress. Once Modi comes in, then there was this whole period of confusion. But once Modi comes in 2014, since then people have been voting for Modi. They have not been voting for BJP or the program of the BJP or for their local MP. A large number of local MPs who have absolutely zero connection with the locality, they've been elected consistently because Modi stands behind them. A similar thing we seem to see happening in Punjab in 1962, when people voted for Nehru, because Nehru's aura had gone down by that time quite a bit. So people voted for Cairo, but within his constituency, within Sarali, people ensured that Cairo loses. Now, finally, Cairo did not lose, but that's a very different story. You see a parallel with Yogi Adityanath, where people voted for BJP. Yogi Adityanath was campaigning for the BJP, but they ensured that Yogi Adityanath almost lost. And today, people in UP say that they still stand with Yogi Adityanath, and it's only in the last few months that the Samajwadi Party has come up to oppose him. The main thing is, people in India look for a very strong leader. This strong leader, what the ideology of the strong leader is, people really don't much care about that. Whether this strong leader is democratic or not, people really are not concerned with that either. However, people certainly are concerned with the fact that their elected representative is corrupt. They do not like corrupt representatives, morally speaking. At the same time, I would say that when it comes to actual voting, there's a major disconnect between what people imagine that they will do and what they actually do. And we see something like that happen in Maharashtra all the time. In Maharashtra, there are large chunks of Maharashtra where the same set of people keep on getting elected. There was a time when they were being elected from the CPI. Then they switched parties, they joined the Congress, they got elected. Then they switched parties, became the NCP and got elected. Then they switched parties, became Shiv Sena and got elected. People were voting for that individual and not for the ideology that that individual stood for.
Okay. Arun, your opening comments, what do you have to say about the data? Because data also says one very interesting thing. You know, the speaker's role is also contested in this data. You know, a lot of people think that they're not doing a good job. But again, I bring back to what is happening right now in the country where all the regional party setups are not operating properly. Those with the succession plan are having a problem like TMC, Uddhav Bhalasaheb Thackeray's party, or even the so-called volunteer-based Aam Aadmi Party. And Arun, parties without regional parties who don't have succession are also having a problem like Biju Janata Dal. So both ways, the snapping is taking place.
Kartikeya, I'll break it down to a very simple thing. There are two kinds of politicians which we have if we are talking about the elected representatives. So one are those who basically, think locally and act nationally. And the other one is that basically who think nationally and act locally. The basic expectation of a common voter is, as Mr. Rajiv Lochan was saying, I would take it a little further, that it's an accepted norm that now when you have an elected representative, that elected representative is corrupt because nobody is fighting the election within the limits of the financial limits which Election Commission has put. So everybody knows that. What they want is that he or she should perform for the constituency. He or she should be accessible to the people in the constituency. And if you will pick up the track record of all such politicians, you yourself have covered, a number of such, politicians. So they can change, their constituencies. They can change their parties, and they will keep on winning the elections. So that's a basic bottom line which is required. Now, but generally, when we think and then, there are politicians basically, which is happening with the current opposition right now, which is basically, thinking locally and acting basically, nationally. So I think that's and sometimes we complicate, things too much. But the basic expectation of a voter is, I have elected you, you perform for me. If you remain in the same party, it's fine. If you are going to a different party and you continue to perform very well, and even better, for example, if somebody from TMC is going to the BJP, so obviously BJP being at par in the center, BJP being par in the state, I'm not justifying it, but I'm looking at it from a common voter's perspective. So if the voter is getting greater benefit, ultimately at the end of the day, for a hungry man, utopia is a world full of food.
Okay. Your opening comments, Brijesh, when I interviewed Sushmita and long time back I had spoken to Jitin, one thing they said, and it has stayed with me, Sushmita is on record. They said if you're not politically relevant in the political system, then you really need to quit that area because then you will have no life. So, you can take your chances in a different shop, but you need to be relevant. First thing first.
See, I would be interesting to. It would be interesting to know, whether the interviewer also asked the voters whether they are happy with the role of the apex court or not. Because if they are asking about the role of speaker, I think that is one question which should have been asked. Because more than speaker, it is the court's writ which is coming into question, and the kind of efficacy with which or the efficiency with which such judgments should have been delivered. If they are upset with 2/3 of people, of a member of parliament or MLAs joining others, the law is there. I think the biggest problem should be, is the law being implemented or being seen as implemented? No, it is not. The fact is that, as what Shushmita said, whether she stays relevant or somebody says, then this is the argument of everyone who defects. How do you justify, the likes of Kapil Mishra, Raghav Chadha or many others, who have been till today, till by the end of the day, criticizing Prime Minister Narendra Modi or criticizing Bharatiya Janata Party, left, right and center, taking personal jibes, making all kind of accusations against the party. And the very next morning, they are at the BJP office, wearing a patta and, joining the party. How do you explain this? It's just an art of being relevant. So everyone does that, but does that suffice? I mean, the second question I would want to know is, the answer to the question is the voter really this moralistic as it's trying to project itself as? No, I don't think so. Because are people who are dal badlus, it's not the first time that is happening.
I asked this before the program started. I asked this to Mr. Rajiv Lochan. He had a very interesting thing to tell me. I'll come to you. Mr. Lochan said, saying that people say something and then they do something differently. They say one thing and they might do something else differently.
See, if you ask someone, everyone wants to come across as an intellectual, a person full of morality. But does that same individual goes out and vote?
Let's take this question to Amitabh. Amitabh has done hundreds of such surveys. He is the best person to answer that. Amitabh.
No, essentially, it's not about moral. So we have to also understand that elections is about arithmetic. So when a person leaves a party, let's say the current example of Shiv Sena UBT MLAs, and we go by the logic that 2/3 of the votes which that candidate got was largely on account of Uddhav Thackeray's leadership and the symbol of Mashal. Correct. So when that person switches to Eknath Shinde's party, in this case, he loses that 2/3, but that 2/3 vote is compensated by the leadership of Eknath Shinde and by the original symbol of Shiv Sena. So even if the people, a section of people are unhappy with this defection and may want to throw out the leader, the arithmetic of the election, and as Rajiv ji very aptly also pointed out, that starting from Nehru, then to Indira, then to perhaps now Narendra Modi, the quotient of the leadership factor in the total votes which a person is getting is perhaps higher than this 1/3 today. So what happens is that even if people are switching sides, that loss of votes is compensated by the institution or structure of the other party and the leadership factor, and they still are ending up winning.
Okay.
Correct. So that's a dilemma of the voter. What do? I mean, even if you don't want to vote, the other party structure and the leader is taking the defector past the halfway mark or past the first past post system.
Or is it because of the fact, Professor Ashwini Kumar, that there is certain uniqueness within Bharatiya Janata Party? For example, Balraj Madhok had a huge run-in with Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He was also offered a seat by Indira Gandhi cabinet, but he never left Bharatiya Janata Party. I'm not saying Bharatiya Janata Party is an exceptional party. There have been people like Kalyan Singh, Karnataka, Brijesh, Yedurappa defected, but there is you can have a list of 4 or 5 people, or Shankar Singh Waghela, but not like Congress party. So do you think that the organization comes into play? Like what happened in TMC, what surprises me is if they have lost hope with Mamta, they could have had hope with the organization. So they neither have the hope with the organization nor with the Mamta.
Karthikeya is a very important point, because if you look at organization as a variable, so I think that's very important.
Nanaji Deshmukh, I read Janata Party kaise tuti, I can just go on, but I was just giving an example, reference, Balraj Madhok and Nanaji Deshmukh.
So both theoretically and empirically, if you look at ideological parties and well-organized parties, cadre-based parties, there are few chances, less defection. If you look at, because that party allows you to operate according to both delegate theory and also trustee theory. So that's also, I don't agree that, the big leader, is kind of really dominant here, because when you go to the mass level, and as Amitabh has done, the voters are, what I would say, irrationally rational, and the defectors are, rationally irrational. I mean, like I'm using this American game theory model, and that's the reality, So this is the paradox, So parties, if you look at regional parties, the dynastic parties, and regional parties are highly, I'm not using as an offensive term, but the issue of corruption, I'm sure that data would tell you about, that why these defectors are seen very differently, opportunistic, unlike in comparative context in other places, transactional and also pragmatic politicians. Although Shiv Sena defectors use that language of, that we are going to serve our people, we need funds for development, So they are trying to use that logic, that we are rationally irrational, So that model is there. And one thing, that's a larger trend I would like to just mention briefly, is the rate of re-election. Compared to other democracies, especially America, the rate of re-election is low in Indian parliament. 2014, Amitabh can confirm it. The rate of re-election was only 33% in parliament, compared to 80-85% in American, both houses. So that really, puts a lot of pressures on defectors, how to survive in this kind of, what I would say, volatile environment, politically volatile environment.
Mr. Rajiv Lochan, is it also because of the fact that there is also a nationalization of the regional parties that is taking place, that hyper-chauvinism is not working anymore?
You see, the regional parties are very heavily dominated by families. And the BJP is offering an alternative to these leaders, that you can live with dignity. You don't have to be completely subordinated to the family. Eknath Shinde was being completely subordinated, just like Chhagan Bhujbal was. These people, they went off. Similarly, in Akali Dal in Punjab, we see, when Senior Badal became irrelevant, the people walked away from the Akali Dal. We see this happening in the TMC at the moment. People don't like to be dominated in this way. The Samajwadi Party in UP is an exception, where people continue to remain within the Samajwadi Party. They have not, in large numbers, joined the BJP or the Congress. So I would say that Akhilesh Yadav and the Samajwadi Party provide the kind of alternative that we are looking for. We are looking for a bunch of people who are not heavily ideological, but at the same time, they are not as transactional as our MPs and MLAs seem to be. And that was something which the survey pointed out. People are not very happy with their elected leaders leaving because they presume that इससे पैसे खाए हुए हैं. So this thing that everyone is eating a lot of money, I think people in India are fed up of this particular aspect. Now, how the BJP deals with it, I would like to very much see in the future.
Okay, Arun, I'll take closing comments from you.
No, I think, as I said earlier, and as Rajiv ji was also saying, that people are fed up of it, but we are bereft of any choices, the normal people. So the only thing is, the best choice would be somebody who is an ideologically committed person, who is honest, who is with integrity, and who also performs in the constituency and also contributes to the national cause. But I think that's a kind of too much to expect from Indian politicians. That is the character of the politics. That's why no significant change has been brought in any aspect of the Indian society or any aspect of
Arun,
the
is it also because of the fact there is lack of understanding of the Indian parliamentary system? A lot of people say that the MP should behave independently in the House. How can they behave independently in the House? I mean, so in the party system, there has to be a whip. There are a lot of things which this survey tells you कि आप अपने आप कर दीजिए. अरे, that is part of the parliamentary structure, which means that the public is also not informed of the way a parliamentary system works.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And also, see, the very fact that you are only now getting professional politicians, and most of the people who have done anything well in their life, they are not coming and joining the politics. Joining politics is not seen as a very positive option in an average Indian household. That itself tells you the story which this survey is telling.
Okay, I've really run short of time. I thank all of you for joining me. But this survey tells us one thing, that Indian voter does have a very strong moral positioning when it comes to their MLAs.
But it doesn't reflect in the choices they make.
Why do you say that, Vijay?
Because we know what it is. I mean, if the choices were that wise, then we wouldn't have been getting so morally angsty about the outcome.
Okay. I thank all of you for joining me, and this is all I had on point one. But please don't go away. And on point 2, we're going to, take you through a very important discussion. And that is about the controversy surrounding Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann and the alleged sacrilege video that has now snowballed into a major political battle.
Your roots, dump in your bones, rose be your amul, do then go for goal. आगे आगे बढ़ती है दुनिया, amul दूध पीती है दुनिया.
Everyone who's tried it believes it. New Birla Opus Wood Paint protects your furniture from scratches. That's why it's the new paint for a new era.
Amid a fragile ceasefire, stakeholders take on the tough questions.
Was Israel surprised by the asymmetric warfare which Iran started conducting?
Yes, I think it was a kind of surprise, the level of savagery.
Why has Iran stopped the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz?
So we have to defend ourselves.
Like never before, on point with Kartikeya Sharma, decoding Hormuz, Kharg and the ceasefire.
What is the future of peace in West